Your life as a Secret Service agent. You know the thing about protecting the most powerful person in the country? Nobody ever thanks you for it in the moment. If you do your job right, nothing happens. No headlines, no applause, no dramatic music, no heroic slow-motion rescue. Just a motorcade pulling away cleanly. A crowd that never realizes how close it came to disaster. And a man in a dark suit with a coiled earpiece standing in the background pretending he's part of the furniture. That's the Secret Service, the most visible, invisible job in America. A profession built on the idea that the best outcome is that nobody ever notices you were there. You've been doing this for 11 years, long enough that your body reacts before your mind does. Long enough that crowds no longer feel like crowds. They feel like patterns, movement, pressure, variables. Every face is a possible threat, every gesture a clue, every delay a decision point. You don't walk into a room anymore, you inventory it. You don't sit down at a restaurant without checking sightlines to the entrance, the kitchen, the exits, the windows, the bathrooms, the corners. Your whole life becomes an exercise in scanning for what doesn't belong. That's what the job does to you. It rewires your attention until the world stops feeling like a place to live in and starts feeling like a place you need to defend. Most people think the Secret Service is just about guarding the president. That's what they know from movies. The black suits, the bulletproof SUVs, the earpieces, the hand on the back of the jacket moving someone out of frame before the danger arrives. But the real job starts long before the motorcade. It starts with threat intelligence, travel planning, advanced teams, site surveys, coordination with local police, private security, military units, and event staff who have no idea how many moving pieces are required to make one public appearance look effortless. It starts with questions no one else asks. Where are the rooftops? Where are the cameras? Which hotel overlooks the route? Which alley provides line of sight to the stage? Who has access to the loading dock? What happens if the power goes out? What happens if a drone appears? What happens if the crowd surges? What happens if the threat isn't a gun, but a car, or a knife, or a bomb, or 1,000 tiny failures stacked together at the wrong second? The answer is always the same. You prepare as if all of it could happen at once. You didn't come into this job because you wanted to be famous. Nobody joins the Secret Service because they want recognition. You joined because you wanted to matter in the most direct way possible. You wanted to be the person between the bullet and the body. You wanted a job where the stakes were real every day, where failure meant history, where competence was measured in lives saved and catastrophes prevented. At first, it felt almost noble. There's a purity to protection work when you're young. It feels clean. Good guys and bad guys. Duty and discipline. The old American myth of standing watch while everyone else sleeps. Then you learned how messy it actually is. You learned that protection is not about looking tough. It's about being boring, precise, and relentless. It's about memorizing evacuation routes no one will ever use. It's about checking a hallway 14 times because you'd rather feel paranoid than be wrong once. It's about going days without sleep because the schedule doesn't care if you're tired. It's about eating cold food, standing in the rain, wearing the same suit until the shoulders start to shine, and pretending your back doesn't hurt. It's about understanding that the president doesn't move alone, ever. Not to a podium, not to a stage, not to a restroom, not to a car, not to a private meeting, not even to a quick walk. There are layers to every movement. Layers of agents, layers of logistics, layers of contingency plans, layers of people you'll never meet but depend on anyway. People think the drama begins when something goes wrong. It doesn't. The drama is in the pressure of knowing how much could go wrong and still having to look calm enough that no one notices the weight you're carrying. Your face becomes part of the uniform. Neutral expression. Eyes moving. Mind working. You are trained to be courteous without being soft, alert without being nervous, invisible without being absent. It sounds simple until you try doing it with cameras pointed at you and a country's future walking 5 feet in front of you. Your worst days aren't always the loud ones. Sometimes the worst day is the one where you spend 16 hours on your feet and nothing happens except your own brain trying to invent something that might. You run in advance at 5 a.m. before sunrise. You check the venue. You walk the roof. You inspect the metal detectors. You review the local police placement. You talk to the event staff, the venue manager, the emergency medical team, the fire marshal, the bomb squad liaison. You confirm radio channels, vehicle access, locked doors, locked gates, barricade placement, stairwells, elevators, and crowd flow. Then you do it again because the first check is never enough. And all the while, the clock is moving. The motorcade is coming. The crowd is already lining up. The president's schedule is a machine, and your job is to make sure the machine never runs into a wall. The public only sees the final product. What they don't see is the machinery of caution behind it. The Secret Service is part protection detail, part intelligence service, part crisis engineering department. You're protecting people, but you're also protecting continuity. The president cannot simply disappear because the country would lose more than a person. It would lose stability. So every detail matters. Every route, every entry point, every stage, every balcony, every vehicle, every line of sight. You are constantly balancing what is ideal against what is possible. You can't close every street. You can't police every face in the crowd. You can't stop every delusional threat on the internet. So you do the next best thing. You narrow the world down to the few things that could actually hurt the person in front of you. And yes, sometimes that means you're the one standing in a bathroom doorway because the president is inside. And no, that moment never gets less surreal. You learn to live with a kind of absurd intimacy with power. One minute you're guarding a head of state, the next minute you're holding a door. The minute after that you're watching him talk to a farmer or a toddler or a veteran, and your entire existence becomes the invisible structure that lets the meeting happen at all. That's the secret of the job. It's less about action than about making action possible. Your life outside work starts to shrink. Friends stop inviting you to things because you always have to check your schedule, which is Secret Service code for I don't control my life. Holidays become complicated. Family events get skipped. Relationships get strained because nobody wants to date a person who can disappear for weeks and then come back with 1,000 things they can't talk about. Your family learns to ask about the job in indirect ways. Are you safe? Are you home? Are you tired? The answer is always yes, no, and extremely. You remember the first time you saw what a real threat looked like. Not the movie version, not the dramatic version, the real one, the quiet kind. The kind where a person's behavior is just a little too fixed, a little too concentrated, a little too off. People imagine threats as obvious. Angry shouting, guns, chaos. But most of the time, danger looks ordinary until it doesn't. A face in the crowd that has lingered too long. A vehicle circling the block too many times. A person who's too interested in the route and not interested enough in the event. A note left behind. A social media post that starts as a joke and ends as a federal investigation. You learn to never dismiss the small things because the small things become the big thing if nobody catches them in time. That's why protective intelligence matters so much. It's not glamorous, but it's the part that keeps the glamorous part from becoming a funeral. Analysts, investigators, and agents spend hours tracking threats, vetting leads, checking patterns, separating noise from substance. Most of it goes nowhere. Most of it is obsession from strangers, fantasy from lonely people, or rage with no execution. But every once in a while, one file is different. One message is different. One name keeps reappearing in the wrong places. And suddenly the job is no longer theoretical. Now it's about movement, containment, and timing. Now it's about whether the president's plane leaves on time, whether the crowd gets moved back 10 feet, whether a door gets locked, whether a person gets intercepted before they get close enough to matter. When people ask what it feels like to protect the president, the honest answer is that it feels like carrying a storm inside your chest and pretending it's just your heartbeat. Adrenaline never goes away. It just gets normalized. You get so used to operating under pressure that calm starts to feel suspicious. A quiet day makes you uneasy because quiet means something could be hiding inside it. You've seen too much to trust silence at face value. There are moments, though, when the job cuts through everything and reminds you why it exists. A child in a crowd wearing a tiny flag on their shoulders. A widow shaking the president's hand because she lost someone in service and needs to know the country still sees that sacrifice. A town hit by disaster where people line the streets not because they love politics, but because they want proof that somebody powerful showed up. You realize then that the job is about symbolism as much as safety. If the president is there, the country is there in some strange, abstract way. That's part of why the details matter so much. You're not just protecting one human being. You're protecting the image of continuity, stability, and leadership that millions of people need to believe in. But belief is fragile. It takes one moment to destroy. That knowledge never leaves you. The day you really understand that is the day everything almost goes wrong. It starts like a normal travel day. Early call time. Heavy air. Everyone moving with that quiet, practiced efficiency that means the detail has done this 100 times before. The route is clean. The venue is secure. The local police have the perimeter covered. You're in the vehicle position you're supposed to be in. The crowd is where it should be. The president is upbeat, smiling, shaking hands, doing the thing that only works because everyone around him is absorbing risk. You're scanning the line when you notice a man by the barrier who isn't filming, isn't cheering, isn't looking at the president. He's looking at the agents. That's the first thing, not the leader, the security. He looks like he's counting you. Then he shifts his weight. Then his hand drops into his jacket. Your body moves before your mind finishes the sentence. You cut across the line. Another agent does the same from the other side. The man freezes. Time compresses. 1,000 details arrive at once. His pupils, his breathing, the shape under the jacket, the angle of his elbow, whether he's reaching or just startled. The crowd still doesn't understand. Then one of your partners shouts. The local police move. The man goes down. It turns out to be a loaded weapon with no permit, no credentials, and a long trail of violent online posts no one had seen until after the fact. Nothing glamorous, nothing cinematic, just one person with one bad decision and 1 second too many. No shots fired, no panic, no headlines about death. That's the success story. Afterward, when the adrenaline wears off, your hands still shake for about 20 minutes. Not because you're weak, because your nervous system just did its job at maximum speed and now it has to remember how to be human again. Nobody celebrates much. The president keeps moving. The schedule barely changes. The crowd is rerouted. The threat is processed. The paperwork begins. You do not get to sit and think about how close it was. That would be a luxury. Instead, you review footage, timelines, radio traffic, witness statements, response time, body positions, cross angles, missed indicators, and every tiny decision that either helped or nearly killed you. The after-action review is its own punishment, necessary, brutal, and never kind. You learn later that the man had posted about the event for weeks. You learn that he had bought tickets under a false name. You learn that he had a history of instability and that people around him saw signs but didn't know what to do with them. You also learn the part nobody likes to say out loud. There will always be people who want to turn a public appearance into a symbol, a stage, or a target. That's part of modern protection. You're not only guarding against weapons, you're guarding against obsession. The older you get, the more the job starts to live in your head even when you're off duty. You sit at dinner and notice the exits. You go to a concert and count the balconies. You walk through an airport and your eyes keep jumping to the ceiling, the baggage area, the glass walls, the unattended bags, the people moving against the flow. Your brain becomes a machine that never fully shuts down. There are people who can turn that off. You are not one of them. Maybe that's why the job selects for a certain kind of personality. Or maybe it creates it. Hard to tell after a while. The secret nobody tells new agents is that the pressure doesn't just come from threats. It comes from the responsibility of being right all the time. The president only needs to be vulnerable once. You need to be correct every day. You need to spot the pattern before it matters, build the plan before anyone asks for it, anticipate the failure before it exists. You are paid to imagine disasters in exquisite detail and then prevent them from ever becoming real. It's lonely work because nobody can fully appreciate how many disasters didn't happen. The absence of catastrophe is your scoreboard. That loneliness follows you home. At home, you are quieter than you should be. You don't know how to explain that your job is 90% vigilance and 10% adrenaline, and that the 90% is the part that changes you. You stop liking loud restaurants because you can't hear everyone. You stop relaxing in a room unless you know where the doors are. You stop trusting your body to rest because your body is always waiting. There are nights you lie awake and hear a sound outside your window, and your mind is already 3 steps into a threat assessment before you remember you're at home, not on detail. You tell yourself it's fine because this is what you signed up for. Maybe that's true, maybe not. What you know for certain is that the country runs on 1,000 jobs no one talks about. The Secret Service is one of them. The agency protects the president, the vice president, the president-elect, visiting heads of state, former presidents and their families under certain conditions, and major national events where the stakes of security are too high to leave to chance. It also investigates financial crimes, counterfeiting, identity theft, and cyber-related threats that can destabilize trust in the systems people rely on every day. That dual mission surprises people, but it makes sense once you think about it. Protection and fraud prevention are both about trust. One protects a person. The other protects the systems that keep a country functioning. If people lose confidence in either one, everything starts to wobble. You've spent enough years in the agency to understand the irony. The closer you get to power, the less power you actually have over your own life. Your schedule belongs to the protectee. Your movement belongs to the plan. Your sleep belongs to the mission. Your emotions belong nowhere at all because emotions are a liability when timing matters. You are expected to be a wall while functioning like a human being. Some people can do it forever. Others break quietly and leave before anyone notices. A few stay until their nerves are permanently rewired. You're somewhere in the middle, still standing, still checking, still moving, still carrying the strange and exhausting pride of knowing that on your worst day, you are still the reason someone else gets to have a normal one. And that's what makes the job compelling. Not the guns, not the cars, not the myth. It's the burden of being the calm in a room that has the right to panic later. It's the skill of making sure history doesn't become tragedy. It's the bizarre intimacy of standing closer to power than most people ever will, while remaining invisible enough that your name is never in the story unless everything has already gone wrong. At the end of one long day, after the motorcade has returned, after the crowd has gone home, after the venue is empty and the radios have finally gone quiet, you stand in the dark near the exit and look back at the path the president just walked. It looks ordinary now, almost boring. Chairs stacked, barricades folded, trash cans waiting to be emptied. The stage lights off. The stage itself just wood and metal and cables. Nobody walking it would ever know how much math lived in that space hours earlier. Nobody would know how many people stood there imagining every possible way it could go wrong. That is the secret. Not the suit, not the earpiece, not the car. The secret is that the job is built on thinking about disaster so constantly that disaster has less room to exist. You make yourself a shield out of repetition, discipline, and fear so controlled it starts to look like calm. You're exhausted. Your feet hurt. Your shoulders ache. You can feel the tension sitting behind your eyes like a second headache. Tomorrow there will be another advance, another threat report, another route to walk, another room to clear, another crowd to scan, another day where the best outcome is silence. And you'll do it again because that's the bargain. You trade normal life for purpose. You trade ease for responsibility. You trade being known for being necessary. Most people will never understand what that costs. That's fine. If you're doing the job right, they never have to. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing for more informational content.